Patching in Arcanist Matthias.
So how did you learn about where we're headed?
From very old field notes. There was something the writer wasn't saying. Something important they didn't write down. I'm certain of it.
So you had a hunch?
A hypothesis.
Right.
What secrets must they hold?
Let's find out.
Hey everybody. So I had mentioned in a previous video that it was my intention to review the game Anthem at or around the time of its release here in February of 2019. And I actually went through a lot of the initial steps that I typically would go through when beginning the process of doing a full-blown game review over the past couple of weeks, having played the VIP and the open demos for the game and having spent quite a few hours with it in the time since its early access release on Origin, capturing various video clips and playing through a multitude of scenarios with and without various groups of friends, and beginning to form a lot of the opinions and have a lot of the experiences I would typically use when creating a game review. That all went relatively well, and I felt for the most part that I was on a pretty good track or pretty good trajectory for the makings of a pretty solid review for the game. But at a certain point in the process, it began to occur to me that the sheer scope and size and breadth and depth of the game was going to require a significant investment in time to properly evaluate. And the simple truth of the matter is that I do not have the time and or resources that it would take to completely and thoroughly review a game of this magnitude at this particular point in time. As I've said on the channel many times in the past, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to properly review a big AAA game such as Anthem. Even if the video only ends up being a few minutes long, you're still talking in many cases about dozens and dozens of hours of work, from familiarizing oneself with the game, to capturing video, to editing said video, to recording narration, to capturing background music, and formulating and executing on various talking points throughout the review process. And as much as I enjoy doing that sort of thing, I find that particularly these days, I really have to weigh the investment in time in creating something like that versus the potential return on that investment. And the simple fact of the matter is that with a big mainstream, widely known, widely publicized, widely covered game like Anthem, the chances of any review I would put together garnering any sort of significant views or attention here on YouTube would be fairly slim, particularly considering that it would take me at least another couple of weeks to get all of that put together and presented to you folks at a level that I would be content or happy with, which leaves me with a bit of a conundrum where this game is concerned. On the one hand, I'd very much like to do some official coverage of it, but on the other, I know that it's highly unlikely that I'd be able to invest any more time in putting something like that together than I already have. And so, we have this video, which you're currently watching. Now, in the past, I had a series that ran on the channel for quite some time called Initial Impressions, which would have been probably the best fit and what I most likely would have used to cover this. But of course, I ended that series way back at the end of 2017, and I really don't have any intention or plan to bring it back. So I don't really feel as though it would make sense or be genuine to do an initial impressions video on this game, as I don't have any intention of doing any more of those in the future. So I think for the sake of being able to make use of what I have already done, and given that most of the people who end up watching this video are probably going to be people who are already familiar with me and the channel and the copious amounts of effort that I've put into previous review videos and gaming related videos that I've done in the past. I think I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and do a sort of mini review or review based on the 15 or so hours that I've spent with the game so far, with the huge disclaimer that my thoughts and opinions and feelings about this game are strictly based on the experiences that I've had with it up to this point. Having said all that, what do I actually think about Anthem? Well, I really like it. There are quite a few things about this game that remind me pretty heavily of some of my favorite games that I've ever played. Things like World of Warcraft, or Borderlands, or Defiance. Games that deeply resonated with me and that I ended up spending a tremendous amount of time playing and enjoying with friends. And I guess that's another reason why I'm a little bit disappointed by not being able to do a full-blown review for the game, because at the end of the day, based on what I've seen of it so far, I feel this is a game that I'm going to be playing and enjoying for quite some time over the next couple of years. And despite having run into a few technical problems and glitches during the initial stages of the early access period, my time with Anthem has for the most part been very technically sound and satisfying. From what I've seen so far, the minor technical problems that I've run into seem to be well on their way to being smoothed out in time for the game's official launch on February 22nd. There are definitely a few things about Anthem that I think are perhaps a bit wonky or suspect from a design standpoint, particularly with regard to user interface and key bindings and some rather nitpicky detail-oriented stuff. But particularly when looking at the broad strokes of the game and considering how ambitious it is in terms of what it's actually trying to accomplish as a 4-player co-op friendly RPG action experience, I really have to give BioWare and by extension EA a lot of credit for the overall sense of quality and feeling of polish and worthiness that this game has exuded so far. I think when you come across technical problems in a game, it's always important to weigh those technical issues against the complexity or the difficulty level associated with the game's development. And it's therefore a lot easier for me to sort of overlook or gloss over or otherwise forgive the technical issues that I've spotted in Anthem so far. And as I said previously, I've already seen a lot of improvement in several key areas that were suspect or questionable during the demos or the initial early access period. So, for the most part, and generally speaking, I would recommend this game to just about anybody who enjoys playing games, based on what I've experienced of it so far, and I think I'm gonna just leave it at that. As you might expect, this experience has really given me some pause and caused me to rethink some of the things that I was considering in terms of what I wanted to do on YouTube this year. And I think it's quite likely that I'm going to end up taking another step back and trying to really think again about what I want to do with this channel and what I can realistically do, given the other commitments and demands on my time these days. I just don't know if it's realistic for me to continue to commit to doing any sort of content on this channel on any sort of regular basis, at least for the foreseeable future. But I'm going to do my best to try to figure that stuff out and perhaps get another update video out in the not too distant future for you folks, just to let you know what's going on in more detail. But for now, I am going to bring this video to a close. Hopefully you folks have enjoyed it. Apologies for it not being what you might have been expecting, and I will see you next time.
Even his own people.
The storm will tear him apart. No one survives the Heart of Rage.
You did.